Hello and welcome back to Deep Sleep Creep's YouTube channel. Today we are going to be listening to 5 true horror stories. If you enjoyed, please like, comment and subscribe. So get comfortable and let's begin. Before starting college, I was filled with anticipation and excitement. Moving into the dorm was a rite of passage, a step towards independence and adulthood. I was looking forward to meeting new people, making friends, and experiencing all the adventures college life had to offer. I was an 18-year-old male, and I was very much into spirituality stuff, so I was probably the weird kid who brought his stones. But I digress. This will be important later in the story. As orientation week and welcome events unfolded, my enthusiasm was slightly dampened by the realization that my new roommate, Ethan, was peculiar, to say the least. He had an eerie aura about him, the kind that made you feel uneasy in his presence. From the beginning, Ethan exhibited odd behavior. He seemed to always be around, observing, his eyes locked onto me with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. It was like he was sizing me up, trying to see something beneath the surface. Ethan's strange habits didn't stop there. He would often disappear into the room's shadowy corners, where I couldn't see what he was doing. And when I tried to engage in conversation, his responses were minimal, sometimes non-existent. It was clear that he wasn't interested in making friends or even acknowledging my presence. The creeping unease grew when I noticed him going through my personal belongings. At first, I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, thinking maybe he was just absent-minded or socially awkward. But as the days passed, his behavior became more unsettling. He seemed obsessed with my things, like he was trying to uncover some hidden secret. I mean, I did have stones and yoga books in my bags. I also had the yoga symbols, and was a practicing Wicca at the time, so I understand people who are really religious being uncomfortable with that type of thing. But it's not like I shoved it in his face. I really tried hiding it, and not make it known of my religion, because I've had friends who have been harassed badly in the past by Christians and other super religious type of people that I didn't want to get into it. One night, as I lay in bed, I heard him whispering to himself. The words were unintelligible, but the tone was disturbing, filled with anguish and desperation. I couldn't understand what was driving him to this bizarre behavior. If I had to make a guess, I think he was speaking in tongue but couldn't be sure. I couldn't take it anymore. The constant feeling of being watched, my privacy being invaded, it was all too much. I decided to request a room change. The resident advisor agreed that something was off about Ethan, and he promised to find a solution. A few days later, I received news that I would be moving to a different dorm room. The relief was immense, and I eagerly left the unsettling room and its enigmatic occupant behind. As I started packing my things one day, Ethan was staring at me very angrily. He asked why I was moving, and I told him a lie and said I already met a lot of cool people who asked me to move in with them, which wasn't the case, and I don't think he was buying it either. He started to get defensive and blocked the door a couple of times when I was trying to leave the room. Whenever I was packing, he was mimicking my moves, blocking me from the door. I was getting so fed up. I started to raise my voice and yell so people in the hallways could hear. I wanted to call the cops, but really couldn't do much because all he was doing was blocking the door. That's a silly reason to call the cops, I thought. So my best course of action was to draw as much attention to myself as much as possible. That's when my resident advisor heard the commotion and asked what was going on, and that's when Ethan finally left. When he did, I hurried and packed as much as I could. Luckily, the resident advisor helped me too, because even he thought that whole situation was bizarre. Luckily, life in my new dorm was refreshing, and I slowly put the strange experience with Ethan behind me. As the semesters passed, I made friends and embraced my college journey. I never heard from or about Ethan again. In fact, no one has heard from him again. Once I moved out and kept passing my old dorm to get the class, It looked almost abandoned. I asked my resident advisor about Ethan, and he said Ethan just left one day and never came back. It remained vacant for years, a mystery within the campus. Looking back, I couldn't help but wonder if Ethan's behavior had been a result of some mental turmoil. If he did suffer from undiagnosed mental issues, then I genuinely hope he does get the help he needs. One thing was for sure. College had its share of strange and unsettling experiences, but none quite as bizarre as my encounter with my mysterious and troubled roommate, Ethan. This story will be a shortened version of events that happened when I went to college. There was more to the story, but rather not get into further detail because some things were too disturbing for me to talk about. But I was thrilled to start my first year of college and move into the dorms. The idea of living independently, making new friends, and experiencing all the freedom college had to offer excited me to no end. However, my excitement turned to apprehension the moment I met my new roommate, Eric. Eric had a reputation on campus as an eccentric and reclusive individual. When we first met, he seemed polite enough, but there was something off about him. His eyes had a perpetual haunted look, as if he carried some heavy burden. The trouble began on our first night in the dorm. As I lay in bed trying to get some rest before the start of classes, I heard Eric muttering to himself in the darkness. At first, I thought he was just sleep-talking, but his words were anything but ordinary. "I see them," he whispered, his voice trembling. "The demons, they're all around us." I sat up in bed, my heart pounding. "Eric, are you okay?" He didn't respond, his gaze fixed on something I couldn't see. I assumed he was sleepwalking or having a nightmare, so I shook him awake. He snapped out of his trance-like state, but his wide-eyed look of terror remained. "The demons," he stammered. "They were right here, I swear." I tried to reassure him, convinced that it was just a vivid dream or a momentary lapse of judgment. But as the weeks went by, Eric's behavior became increasingly erratic. He would spend hours drawing strange symbols on the walls and floor of our dorm room, muttering incantations under his breath. He claimed he could see demons lurking in the corners, their malevolent eyes watching his every move. I tried to be understanding, thinking that perhaps he was struggling with his mental health or stress from the transition to college life. I encouraged him to seek help from the campus counseling center, but he vehemently refused, insisting that no one could help him. As the semester wore on, Eric's obsession with the supernatural escalated. He began to lose touch with reality, barricading our door with furniture to keep the demons out. I would often return to our room to find him huddled in a corner, clutching a crucifix and reciting prayers in a desperate attempt to ward off the unseen threats. One night, as I was studying in the common area of our dorm, I received a frantic call from Eric. He was convinced that the demons had taken physical form and were coming for him. I rushed back to our room, fearing for his safety. When I entered, I found Eric backed into a corner, his eyes filled with terror, and his hands bloody from self-inflicted wounds. He was convinced that he had to perform a ritual to banish the demons from our room. Terrified and unsure of what to do, I called campus security, and they arrived shortly. They took Eric into custody and ensured that he received the psychiatric help he so desperately needed. In the aftermath of that nightmarish experience, I was assigned a new roommate, and I moved on with my college life. But the memory of Eric's torment and his claims of demons still haunt me to this day. It was a chilling reminder that sometimes the horrors of college life can be more profound and unsettling than anything you could ever expect. Starting college was a thrilling new chapter for me and my two best friends, Jake and Dylan. We had chosen the same university and decided to live in a dorm together. It was a dream come true. a chance to continue our close-knit friendship while embarking on this exciting journey. One crisp autumn evening, we decided to venture out to the secluded nature walk on campus. It was a hidden gem, nestled in the woods far from campus. The idea was simple. We wanted to enjoy a night of underage drinking, sitting around a bonfire and reveling in our newfound freedom. The three of us set off with a backpack filled with snacks, hid a few bottles of alcohol, well, we were underage after all, and set out for our night of drinking and mini-partying. The night air was crisp, and the darkness of the woods added an element of spookiness to our walk. We reached our destination, a small clearing with a fire pit surrounded by tall trees. The stars were visible overhead, and the silence of the forest was punctuated only by our laughter and the crackling of the fire. It felt like we were the only people in the world, and we enjoyed that after a long week of welcome, week, and orientation, and meeting new people. It just felt overwhelming and exhausting. At the same time, it was exciting too, but all in all a nice drink and chatting with friends at night was much needed. As we sat around the fire, we shared stories of our high school experiences, our hopes and fears for the upcoming semester, and our excitement about finally leaving our teenage years behind. It was a night of enjoyment before we got busy with our semesters, and we relished every moment of it. As the night wore on and we continued to drink, the atmosphere grew more relaxed. We leaned back, our faces bathed in the warm glow of the fire, our worries and stresses temporarily forgotten. But then, the tranquility of the woods was shattered as we heard rustling in the trees and the faint crunch of leaves underfoot. At first, we brushed it off as our imaginations, attributing it to the wind or small animals scurrying around. Then, the first rock was hurled from the darkness and landed with a thud near the fire. We froze, our laughter extinguished, replaced by unease. Someone must be messing with us, we thought. A prank, perhaps. We glanced at each other, unsure of what to do next. Seconds later, more rocks came hurtling out of the darkness. They were closer this time, landing closer and closer to us. Panic gnawed at us, but we still clung to the belief that it was just a prank by some fellow students. Then, it happened. A big rock was hurled and struck me in the eye, and pain exploded in my head. Blood flowed, and I clutched my face in agony. My friends screamed, their voices filled with terror and concern. It was no prank, it was an attack. Without a moment's hesitation, we scrambled to our feet and raced away from the fire and back through the mini path that led to our campus in the woods. Branches whipped at us as we fled, our hearts pounding in our chests. The fear and adrenaline fueled our desperate escape. We didn't stop running until we reached the safety of our dormitory, our hearts still racing and my injured eye throbbing with pain. We sadly didn't report the incident because we were underage drinking and just started college. We didn't want to get expelled and kicked out on our first week. Luckily, the skin above my eye didn't need stitches. We didn't think. In the end, we never discovered who had attacked us that night in the woods. The incident remained a chilling and unresolved chapter in our college experience. Needless to say, my friends and I never went back to that part of campus ever again. Our semester was great though. My freshman year at college was a whirlwind of excitement and anticipation. The moment I set foot on campus, I knew I wanted to experience it all, including the fraternity scene that seemed to dominate the social life. I had always dreamt of joining a fraternity, and it was the perfect opportunity to make lasting memories. My new roommate, let's call him Mike, had different plans. He wasn't particularly interested in the fraternity scene and preferred to steer clear of wild parties. But we had ended up at a party school, and I convinced him that we might as well embrace the college experience, at least for one night. He reluctantly agreed. So then we started making our way to a sketchy-looking fraternity party, The place was alive with music, laughter, and the unmistakable scent of alcohol. The pulsating bass and the flickering neon lights created a surreal atmosphere, drawing us in like moths to a flame. The fraternity house itself was an old, imposing structure with creaky wooden floors and walls that had seen their fair share of wild parties. The air was thick with anticipation, a mixture of excitement and tension that seemed to hang over the entire building. The walls echoed with laughter and the clinking of cups, and it felt like a world far removed from the ordinary. The living room was a blur of activity, with people dancing, chatting, and playing various drinking games. The music was deafening, and it reverberated through the floors, making conversation nearly impossible. The partygoers, a mix of guys and girls, were dressed in an array of outfits, from casual jeans and t-shirts to more revealing attire. It was a diverse crowd. The scent of alcohol hung heavy in the air, intermingled with the aroma of various foods and snacks that were scattered throughout the house. Red plastic cups, the unofficial party accessory, were everywhere, filled with a variety of concoctions that would undoubtedly fuel the revelry. As the night started to pick up, I lost track of time, caught up in the excitement of the party. The music seemed to pulse through my veins, and I had a great time with girls dancing with and on me. It was like heaven on earth. I also kicked myself thinking I should have done a competition with my roommate to see who could get the most numbers. But amidst the chaos and the revelry, I noticed that Mike had drifted away from our group of friends. I tried not to worry too much, assuming he was just mingling with others or maybe taking a breather outside. However, as the hours passed and I still couldn't find him, I started to worry. I asked around hoping someone had seen him, but no one had. Panic set in as I searched room after room in the sprawling fraternity house. The noise, chaos, and being drunk made it difficult to focus, but I was determined to find my roommate. Finally, I reached the end of a long, dimly lit hallway. The door at the far end was slightly ajar, and a sense of unease washed over me as I approached it. I pushed the door open, and my heart sank as I saw the scene before me. Mike was sprawled on the bed, disoriented and struggling to wake up. In the dimly lit corner of the room, a man was standing, his presence sending shivers down my spine. Panic surged through me, and I rushed over to Mike, shaking him awake. "Mike, we need to get out of here now," I yelled urgently. As he slowly regained his senses, he looked at me, confusion and fear in his eyes. What happened? I didn't have the answers, but I knew we had to leave immediately. I kept glancing at the man in the corner, waiting for him to make a move, but he just stood there and smiled. I couldn't see his full face as it was in the dark, but those teeth I could see. I was drunk also. But when a life-threatening event like this happens, it's like you get a second wind that makes you hyper-focused and alert. I helped him up, his legs wobbling, and we stumbled out of the room, leaving behind the scene. We made our way to my car parked nearby, and as we drove away from that messed-up fraternity party, Mike finally explained what had happened. He told me that some guy had given him a drink, promising it would get him incredibly wasted. Mike had taken it, but he didn't remember anything after that. He said he didn't want to talk about it any further, and I respected his wishes. We got back to our dorm safely. Mike didn't want to call the cops because he knew they couldn't do anything in a he said case. Plus, there's no point explaining to the cops what happened when you didn't know what happened. It just doesn't make sense. We never spoke of it again. As college students, my friends and I were always seeking some type of adventure we can do or exploration. We had heard countless stories about the abandoned building that stood on the fringes of our university campus, each tale more chilling than the last. It had become a legendary source of fascination among our peers, a place where the bravest dared to venture, and the curious were drawn like moths to a flame. The building had once been an integral part of the university's history, but now it lay forgotten, cloaked in an aura of mystery. It used to be an infirmary or campus doctor's office, or where they would teach their soon-to-be nurses, doctors, or any healthcare professional, I believe. I can't remember the specifics, but it circled around that. Rumours swirled about its past, tales of strange occurrences, unexplained phenomena, and the talks of ghosts. It was the kind of place that sparked our imaginations and ignited our desire for adventure. One evening, fueled by curiosity and a sense of invincibility that often comes with being college students, my friends and I decided to embark on our own expedition into the Forsaken Building. We believed that the stories and legends were merely exaggerations, products of overactive imaginations and the desire to embellish a good tale. Armed with flashlights and crowbars, we gathered outside the imposing structure. The moon hid behind thick clouds, casting a somber pall over the scene, and the air was heavy with anticipation. The doors of the abandoned building creaked ominously as we forced them open, revealing a dark, dusty interior that reeked of decay and neglect. Our flashlights cut through the darkness, revealing peeling wallpaper, shattered windows, and crumbling staircases. It was like stepping into a time capsule of bygone years, which was really cool to say the least. We explored the ground floor first, our voices hushed in reverence for the silence that enveloped us. Our footsteps echoed through the empty hallways, and the sound of our breathing seemed amplified in the stillness. As we ascended the creaky staircase to the upper floors, the atmosphere grew even more oppressive. The air seemed colder, and the sense of foreboding intensified. We couldn't shake the feeling that we were intruders in a place that wanted us gone. On the top floor, we discovered a room unlike the others. Its door was sealed with heavy chains and padlocks, as if someone had tried to keep whatever lay inside from escaping. We exchanged nervous glances, our curiosity overshadowed by a growing sense of unease. Alex, the daredevil, suggested breaking into the room. He wielded his crowbar with determination, smashing the padlocks and sending them clattering to the floor. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a room filled with dust-covered furniture and faded photographs. But as our flashlights scanned the room, we froze. In the center of the space, an old, tattered chair seemed to rock back and forth on its own, as if an invisible presence was sitting on it. Cold dread washed over us as the room filled with an icy chill. Suddenly, the air was filled with a whisper, barely audible, but undeniably there. It was as if the very walls were speaking to us, their words unintelligible, but filled with a palpable sense of anguish. Panic overtook us, and we bolted from the room, the door slamming shut behind us with a deafening finality. We ran through the dark hallways, stumbling over debris, and raced down the creaking stairs. The abandoned building seemed to resist our escape, but we pushed forward, our hearts pounding in our chests. When we finally burst out into the open night air, we were gasping for breath, our faces pale with terror. The building loomed behind us, silent and menacing, its secrets still hidden within. As we huddled together outside, we couldn't deny the undeniable truth. We had experienced something unexplainable within the abandoned building. I still can't believe it to this day. I know we saw something. I know we felt something. Whatever that something is, I hope it stays in its building and doesn't follow us home. We aren't the religious type of people, but we did pray that the spirit or evil did not follow us home. I'd advise that if you are just as curious as I am about exploring abandoned buildings, then do it in the daytime, please. It's not worth getting hurt over or losing your life over.